Now, let's take a look at some of the benefits and the problems of client-server systems. And of course, none other than Andre Cadogan. Let's find this name is so, so unique. So, if I was to ask you a question in terms of like what benefits offer the client-server architecture to the user, right? Well, in part one of that answer, you would say the user needs to know a smaller number of user interfaces when more than one server can be accessed by the same client. Compare with the case when every system offers its own interface. So this is a particular servers. We have several servers, and then they are one particular client. And as we could see, the benefits to the user of the system, where again the user needs to know a smaller number of user interfaces, because we could have several servers connected to particularly one client. Like you could have like virtual machines being connected or your client could access different services. We could have web browser services, we could access services on the on telebanking, telnet, and so on. So these are some of the benefits that we'd want to look at. What about in this instance where you have one server and there are several clients, which most of you all would look at in terms of a server serving up a lot of clients like Facebook or something like that now. So this is like when more than one client is available for a type of server, then the user can make a choice and work with the interface offered by the particular client software, which is well adapted to his or her situation, knowledge, and experience in this case now. And as I said, Facebook, one server, set of clients, and so on now. Right, so client-server system benefits for the distributor of data, which we know that already. My pronunciation is quite not that unique, but my voice is okay. All right. So the distributor needs to be concerned less with the user interface. Instead, his or her server only has to be compatible with the important client programs. That is, with one or several important client-server protocols. So, due to the benefits for the user, sometimes equal buyer, and we know that already, the number of users slash consumer slash buyer would grow. And that's the whole idea of the distribution process of data. Right? As I said before, the distributor needs to be concerned less with the user interface, which is true. Instead, his or her server only has to be compatible with important client programs. Like, for example, you could design your own user interface in Microsoft Access if you are pulling it from an SQL server, because you don't need to design any user interface for that, and so on. And this is what makes client server systems are so better than the mainframes. Right, as we move on. So, what about the benefits for database management system? Well, the user interface and some other functions can be processed by the microcomputer or the PC, and it's not mini because mini is like a smaller version of a mainframe or something like that. When it executes the client retrieval software, this makes the workload lighter, which is true because of the database computers which execute the data server software and of the data communication network which must transfer less data concerns with the user interface. So the thing about it is that when we look at that whole architecture with client server based systems in terms of application software, looking at the database systems and so on, we would see how shared processing takes place. And I always like to say that is what you call the true client server architecture. Right, where are we? So client server system problems with client programs. So Windows, I mean, there are benefits, but we have to look at the problems. Like, for example, many of you all cannot figure out that SQL server for me as yet. And one or two students actually did it, so I just imagine that you all will be able to get it. So let's look at this one. The preferences, history, bookmarks, mail, and news files of the Windows client programs on the microcomputer can and should be adapted by every user. This is a problem when these files are stored on the hard disk on a client microcomputer when more than one person uses the same microcomputer, because of course. So what is the solution? Install the system so that the personal files can be easily stored in a personal directory on a drive in that local network. Like, for example, we have a drive at work that is only accessible to, yes, only our lecturers alone and not you all, right? Where we could share a particular folder where all the other lecturers could access. Because sometimes when you are in a client server environment, sometimes people just want to store like information that should be shared by everybody. So the easiest thing to do is that if you made any amendments or changes on a particular file, we'll then put it back into a folder where everybody could see or share at the same time. So there's also solutions to some of the problems, and that's it. So what about the program's compatibility with protocols? Like for example, the client server protocols all have one part concerning the client and one concerning the server. Programs used at the client as well as the server side can be compatible to a certain extent with such a client server protocol. Compatibility is most real cases not a full yes or no. In that case, like for example, when I was installing client access to integrate my PC with the AS400 system, I had to use a different protocol all entirely for communication. Hence the reason why middleware is a kind of thing here, but we don't want to mix up middleware and protocols and so on. Alright? So let's move on. Client server systems examples, part 4. And let's look at it. Which client server protocol do you know? Like, I know all these, but you don't know any. I'm just telling you. Like, for example, SMTP, the POP for email, and IMAP, and the news protocol, and we call NNTP, which all of you will have to find out what all these acronyms is about, because you don't expect me to tell you everything. I mean, I have to send you home to do some work anyway. And then there's Telnet, NFS, and FTP, which all of us use. Grouper, a beautiful service, and HTTP with WW service, and of course Z39.50, which I'm telling you none of you all know. And you want to bet when I ask that question in class, none of you all will be able to tell me. I'm betting you all. How is client server approach evolving? A very tricky question that I probably doesn't have one or two answers per se. So from few central server computers with mainframes for instances with dumb terminals to more server computers with a diversity of thin to fat client computers, from internet client software dedicated to a particular server to more applications of more generic client software, example incorporations of functions such servers in the WW accessibility with one big multi-purpose generic WW client program. I mean, this is a whole trend, and to the extent to see how far distribution has been taking place, especially with client server. And this is a question that will come in exam, and I will be grading you in terms of the research that you have put in into that particular question that has been asked. Which client server or which client server client programs do you know? I wonder if I should tell you all. Well, make sure you can answer that question next time we come for class. Cheers. And as always, just subscribe to my channel.